everyone, and welcome to the 101 on Sports here on Fox 2. I'm Randy Karraker from 101 ESPN. It's great to have you with us, and it's always great to talk to our panel tonight. The sports director here at Fox 2 is Martin Kilcoyne. Good to have you with us.
It's only fair because Randy has been on my show countless times. It's my turn to be on your show.
And it's great to see you. And columnist from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, you hear him on the Big 550 as well. The one, the only Ben Frederickson. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Randy. I feel like I'm in between two legends. I know that show, In Between Two Ferns.
Well,
this is in between two St. Louis sports legends.
You got some gray hair. You get enough gray hair and you can become a legend in this town.
We've just been around a long time.
Right. Yeah, longevity.
We need younger people to come along that haven't heard all of our stories.
That's right.
This is helpful.
Yeah. We will have story time later on in this show. Let's start with this, and Ben, we'll start with you because you know recent Cardinal history, you know longtime Cardinal history. This has been the most controversial couple of months of Cardinal season since I've been in the business. What about you? What do you think of the early returns here, at least from the Cardinals off the field?
Well, they've certainly given us a lot to talk about and debate, discuss. I think what we've watched with the Cardinals this season is a team that isn't used to losing and hasn't lost very much like this early in a season. And I think we've seen them kind of scramble and struggle with that a little bit. Usually they're very buttoned up. They're very in-house. Things that happen kind of behind the scenes, they go above and beyond to try to keep them from getting out. And of course, we try to make them come out. And that's the kind of the dance back and forth. But man, with some of the minor controversies, the Contreras thing being the big one, which was the biggest head scratcher. Some people will point to the Tyler O'Neill issue with Ollie calling out his base running. I actually don't think that was much of a controversy at all. But the Contreras thing for sure, and some of the decisions that have been a little erratic. I think it's really a sign of a front office, of a coaching staff that is trying to kind of grab levers and push buttons that get them to find some sustained momentum. It's been a little uncharacteristic for them.
I said about a month ago, the Cardinals have never been worse and they've never been more interesting because
right.
They pride themselves on being buttoned up. I remember when Joe Madden was on the Cubs, I said, they're like a keg of beer and blue jeans, and the Cardinals are the khakis and loafers and maybe a Merlot, and it's like they're just very different how they go about it. And yet this season has been tabloid material between the O'Neill thing and then Contreras, and even Jordan Walker now coming out and saying, well, what they were kind of telling me to do was kind of getting in my head, so I just kind of fixed it on my own. I'm like, what is good? The messaging down there has never been so disjointed, and usually they are kind of all on the same page. And it might be, you don't want to be a hypocrite because we want people to be as candid as possible, that Ollie Marmol sometimes is too open or too blunt, and we're like, oh, wow, really? That's what's going to happen? And then maybe later the front office, Mo and company say, well, let's tamp that down a little bit, but it's already too late.
Right, and it wouldn't be as big of a deal if the Cardinals weren't kicking around the bottom of the National League. This doesn't happen either. You don't get to June 1st with the Cardinals at the bottom of not just the National League Central, but the bottom of the entire National League.
Well, to me, it's they're little controversies that bubble up because things aren't going well. And when you're not winning, everything kind of grinds a little harder and sparks fly a little more often. The reason that's happening, the biggest reason, is because this team, at least for the start of the season, wasn't pitching well consistently enough. And that was something that we talked about all offseason. Everybody said, this rotation looks a little suspect. So to me, some of what we've seen have been the Cardinals trying to point to other reasons as to why they're struggling when they ignored the biggest one this offseason. If this team was stacking up quality starts one after the next, all of these other issues like Tyler O'Neill's base running or Wilson Contreras winding up being the temporary scapegoat for a bad pitching staff, those wouldn't be the issues. So I think a lot of that is kind of trying to, well, we know that's a big issue. Let's ignore that and let's maybe find some other things to point to. I think that's some of what's going on here.
And I think it goes back to the message again when John Mozeliak said payroll will go up. Again, we all went, wow, they're going to spend. And I don't think he meant we're going to spend. It'll go up because it always goes up a little bit or incrementally. It wasn't qualified in any way. And I think the fan base even said, okay, this is our chance. Now let's spend. You get Contreras. Everybody said that's a good piece, a necessary piece. Now what? And then when it went quiet, I think everybody was confused about what the approach was. Because I think everybody assumed, okay, Contreras and what? And really, Contreras comes in minus Molina and Pujols. You really didn't go up.
Yeah, I get the sense that the Cardinals, for one of the rare times, they misjudged the market. They knew that Verlander was going to get ridiculous money and that DeGrom was going to get ridiculous money. I don't think they foresaw Carlos Rodon getting $37 million a year or the number of pitchers that got contracts. A guy like with Chicago, the right-hander from
Stroman?
the Yankees.
No.
Used to be with the Pirates, but he got $28 million over
Taillon.
3 years.
Jameson.
Yeah, Jamison Taillon. It's you just there were things that happened in that market that I don't think anybody foresaw, and certainly the Cardinals didn't.
So you think they were going to be in and then saw the market
Yep.
and then backed away?
Yeah.
Okay, that's probably a better read.
I think they had some questions about some of the guys that were out there, and then they saw the prices start to grow and thought, man, they had questions. Like Carlos Rodon would have been a good fit. There were Cardinals on this team who were telling the front office, Carlos Rodon can help us, go get him. And they had questions about his injury potential, and those turned out to be correct.
Yep.
I mean, he wouldn't be pitching if he were with the Cardinals. And some of the guys they could have gone out and got are not exactly killing it this year. A lot of them are hurt. Now, we'll see what it looks like at the end of the season. The Cardinals are caught between wanting to say, well, look, that was money wisely unspent if those guys don't perform for their teams on their new deals. However, it doesn't solve their problem, which was they entered the season with the starting pitching staff that wasn't good enough.
And I think they need to gamble, too. They're at a point now in their history where they need to gamble a little bit.
Well, at some point, I think Arenado and Goldschmidt are going to look at each other and saying, this is our prime. We're perennial all-stars. We're borderline Hall of Famers. Are we going to build around us? Are we going to go for it? Because our clock is ticking. I'm sure those guys are thinking that. I would have been fine if you bring back Quintana and just say he's not a big-ticket guy. We like what we saw. He fits in well here. And whether or not he's going to have a good year moving forward, I think looking back, if you say we're bringing back Quintana, he's part of our overall depth. We liked what he did. I think people would have been okay with that. But letting some of the pieces go that helped save your rear end a year ago, I thought was confusing.
Even though the Cardinals are, as we mentioned, kicking around last place in the league, I still think they're going to win the division. Do you guys share that feeling that eventually the names on the back of the jerseys will actually perform like they performed in the past?
It wouldn't shock me at all if they won the division. Before the season, I predicted them to win the division and then once again get snuffed out in a wild card series. And that's the division. The National League Central, I mean, if they ever had a chance to put the Cardinals down early and to really bury them, they missed it. The Cubs are falling apart. The Reds are kind of starting to try to get their act together. The Pirates have cooled off. The Brewers have a ton of pitching injuries, which it would be easy to point to the Brewers and say, bet on the pitching, because that's usually what factors in the course of the season in the division. But they've got some guys hurt, and they can't hit. So I wouldn't surprise me at all if the Cardinals find a way to win this division. But I don't think anything from what we've seen so far suggests that they have the makings of a team that's going to do anything more than that.
And even beyond the division, the whole league is down. And if you look at like wild card standings, all these teams that are 500 or a game over are wild card teams. So it's not just the division. The whole league appears to be down, which is to the Cardinals' benefit. I do wonder year in, year out, though, if they know they sort of have this comfort zone that the Central is never going to be very good. There is no dominant team like the Braves. There is no dominant team like the Dodgers. So it kind of gives them a safe place instead of maybe poking them a little bit like, how are you going to catch the Dodgers? How are you going to catch the Braves? They don't have to compete with that every year, and I hope that doesn't lead to some complacency.
And that's why I talk about making a gamble, because you can count on Jordan Walker, you can count on Mason Wynn, you can count on Gordon Graceffo or McGreevy or whoever, but at some point you're going to have to get a guy in there, right, to lead your rotation primarily. And when's the last time the Cardinals went out and got a guy to lead their rotation? It was Chris Carpenter, who was injured in 2003. It's been a long time since they've gone out and gotten a guy.
Yeah, they've made some good. I mean, last season at the trade deadline, we were all kind of going, okay, Quintana and Montgomery. Well, look at how they turned out. But Quintana's gone. Now he's hurt with the Mets. But Montgomery is coming up on a free agent cycle. They didn't extend him in spring. Miles Michaelis has rounded into form. He can be a top of the rotation guy, and he should be. Flaherty's going to be a free agent. I mean, they have a chance at this upcoming trade deadline to make a move that really brings a spearhead to their rotation. And, once again, we're going to hear them talk about the price and the cost. Well, they didn't like the price before the season started. Well, the cost at the trade deadline is going to be higher. It's going to be higher in prospects, or you're going to have to be willing to take on a big contract that some other team is looking to unload. But that's the thing about not doing it in the offseason, Randy. That's what they need, that playoff starter who, when you see his name, you go, oh, no. It's a 5-game series, and you are terrified about seeing that guy. They don't have it right now. The cost of that gets higher every single year. And yeah, it is a gamble because you don't know if the guy's going to get healthy, but that's what they need. That's what they're missing. Unfortunately, they traded some of those guys away because they thought Jack Flaherty was going to be that answer, and that's what they need. So, and the answer's not coming right away either. So you're going to have to get it from the outside if you want to be that kind of potent playoff team.
And as smart as they've been historically with identifying talent and bringing in the right people or pulling off a great trade, I feel like this year's approach, which is so analytically driven typically, is a little bit of this. Well, if Flaherty's good, well, if Waino can give us a few good starts, like every time these guys take them out, I feel like it's and that doesn't seem to be a winning approach with a team, especially that's driven by numbers. Yet a lot of this year was based on hope. Tyler O'Neill, which is kind of crazy to have so many of these pieces that you're just kind of hoping work out.
Ben Frederickson, Martin Kilcoyne, two St. Louis media veterans. We're going to get some of their favorite stories from doing interviews in clubhouses next on the 101 on Sports here on Fox 2. Welcome back to the 101 on Sports here on Fox 2. Ben Frederickson from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and the Big 550, Martin Kilcoyne. I guess you're my boss. You're the sports director at Fox 2.
Boss. Yeah, that's right. I need to be – the memo's coming about the Sunday content, okay?
So one night on a Sunday night many years ago, Albert Pujols was in his prime, and I had been on vacation the week before. So I got home on Saturday. I'm working Sunday, working a Sunday night. And he comes up to me and says, man, I can't believe you said I use steroids. I said, what? He said, yeah, I was watching you on Channel 5. He said, you said I was using steroids. I said,
doesn't fit the Karraker DNA.
No,
here.
it really doesn't. So I said, Albert, I wasn't even in town. I don't know what you're talking about. He said, no, I know you did. Me and Yachty were in the training room and we were watching you. Well, so I called Rennie Knott and I said, Rennie, I wasn't on your show. Was anybody on your show last week talking about Albert maybe using performance enhancers? He said, oh, yeah, a local rabble-rouser was on the show with Rennie and was talking about Albert using – and, tall white guy,
Sure.
So
did he happen to say Carpe Diem at the end
there
of
you
it?
go.
Okay.
And so Albert just dresses me down. And it's only me and Albert, Skip Schumacher, and Yachty in the locker room. And Skip comes over after Albert walks away. And he says, did you just get yelled at? I said, yeah, and I don't even know why. And finally I was able to actually, thanks to Rennie, was able to solve the problem. But that's just one of the weird things that's happened to me in a locker room.
So that was Skip's observational displays at work. That's why he's going to be a great manager.
Right.
He saw Albert hollering at Randy and said, did you just get yelled at?
And Albert was very measured, and he wasn't, raising his voice. But yeah, metaphorically speaking, I did get yelled at.
Well,
by
Albert had a great way of being intimidating without being loud. I mean, he didn't have to yell at anybody.
Yeah.
He just looked at you and you knew you were in trouble.
Right.
I would say.
I appreciated the way he handled those claims too, because some people say, well, people don't know me. No, Albert said, I'm going to take anyone who says it to court, and I'm going to threaten them with lawsuits. And it's kind of like either put up or shut up. Like this is important to me that people know that's not true, and I'm going to pursue this until people back down and apologize.
Yeah.
And anyone who ever said it publicly, they either back down or apologize.
Yeah.
That was really it.
So people read your work, people see your work. Any set twos or any memorable, whether it's the Cardinals, Blues, Rams. Marshall was always combative. You have a great relationship with Marshall Falk, but he was always combative with us during the week.
Oh, for sure. And one thing Marshall Falk said, and I think it's true. It didn't explain why he could be so prickly so often, but he said, I can't stand it when they stick the microphone in my face and say, talk about Atlanta. And he would, because they were playing the Falcons, and he'd say, why don't you talk about Atlanta? And it wasn't a question.
Right, ask a question.
And the job of all of us walking in there is have a question. Hopefully it's an educated question. And a lot of times we are just curious, but it should be a reasonable question. And there is a lot of, hey, how about this game tonight? And they're like, and you could see the players spin how do I answer this? Oh, yeah, a big game. So Marshall was great. And when we first did the show, I was thinking I would just taken over as sports director. And I'm like, they signed him to do this Sunday show. And all I knew is he was a little difficult. I'm like, welcome to the end of my career. And he would walk in. The first night he walks in, he sits down. We're in the break. And then we start going. He's like, oh, Martin, let me tell you about that play and what happened. And he's great. And then the next commercial. And then, but by about
Game
week
time is
3,
game time.
week 4, week 5, we started talking a lot more and getting along great. At the end of the year, he has a knee injury. And I said, just tell me what's going on. Are you going to play or not? And I said, you don't have to tell anybody. And he said, I can't tell you. And I said, well, I'm just you and me, right? And he goes, but if I tell you, then your boss is going to say, what do we know? And he goes, you're going to have to lie to your boss. So he goes, so you should thank me for not telling you. I was like, he had thought it all the way through. And I go, that is a great answer. Now what's going on with the name? I told a story about Rick Hummel because we all love the commish. And to me, it's a LaRussa story, but it's about the commish. They win the World Series in 2006. It's a Friday night. It's on Fox 2. We have coverage until like midnight or so, interviewing everybody, and they're replaying the interviews. I get a call from work, and they said, Mike Shannon just announced that LaRussa's retiring. This is 06. I said, oh, my gosh. They said, can you call Tony? I called him. He always answers.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, how are you doing? And he gave me the bleep. We just won the World Series. He said, dumbest question you've ever asked. I'm like, this is true. I'm sorry. I said, but they said there's this report. He goes, who said it? Shannon. He goes, no, I'm not retired. And I said, just tell me I'm not going to wake up and pick up the Post-Dispatch and Rick Hummel has a big story about you retiring. And Tony said, it's not true, okay? But if it was, I'd give it to Hummel and not you anyway. And I hung up, and I'm like, do I feel better or not feel better? I ran out at about 6 a.m. to check the paper.
That's great. My first, speaking of Rick, my first summer in St. Louis doing anything with sports was when I was the Rick Hummel intern. Tony was still the manager. And my job was to go down, like they let me in the the manager scrum. So I would literally sit on the couch and try to not step on anybody's toes or not really be noticed at all. One day we walk in and it's Tony and Bob Knight is sitting on his desk. And I'm sitting here going like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, what am I doing in this room? Right. And Joe Strauss walks in and immediately starts ripping Bob Knight. I think like there was like some VCU Indiana like storyline basketball.
Right.
And they're just going at it. And Tony's just sitting there watching it,
loving it.
Amused. And I'm thinking, man, this is a world I never ever thought I'd be in. That same summer, Ryan Terrio's there, and Ryan crazy, and I'm sitting there interviewing him it's like a notebook, like some tiny little thing, and he's talking at me. He's very engaged, eye-to-eye contact, and next thing I know, he reached out and he just like slaps me, like punches me in the arm, and I'm like, what the heck? What did I do? Did I say something wrong? And I look down and I'm bleeding, and I'm like, what? Did he stab me? And he had been talking to me, never looked away, and he had killed a mosquito that had landed on my arm. And I was like, that's one of the weirder interviews that I've ever had in a clubhouse, and probably will be. So learned a lot that summer, and certainly of how to navigate the clubhouse. But that interview stood out as one of the more odder things. Like, did that person just punch me? No, he was actually doing me a favor. And talk about hand-eye coordination. He never ever looked away.
That's impressive.
Pretty impressive.
I think one of my more awkward was with Richie Incognito. He had been flipped off the fans or something. He was really the team was bad. And he had bad character, and it just really bothered me. And we had to carry the games, all the post games. So on that Wednesday at his locker, I'm here to him. And I forget the line of questioning, but I said, do you think you're out of line? Do you think you need to be disciplined or whatever? And he was just like shaking as he's answering. I thought, he's going to kill me. Because he's a guy who we know can snap. We knew more even later. Sure. And I thought, I'm pushing him, but I really thought he deserved to be pushed at that point. But I thought at any second, he was literally like, his body was wobbling. I'm like, he's about to turn into the Incredible Hulk. And it didn't happen. He ended up giving solid answers. But I was more mad, too. And I said to Hazlitt on his Monday show, I said, how can you expect your players to have any respect for this? And so it was a topic, and Bob Wallace, our friend, said, oh, let it go. It's football. And I said, no, I'm not letting it go because it's decency. And so I was on my pious ground there, and I nearly got killed.
Martin, Ben, coming up, what are these guys most intrigued about that's coming up on the St. Louis sports scene? We're going to head down the stretch of the 101 on Sports on Fox 2 coming up. Welcome back to the 101 on Sports here on Fox 2. Martin Kilcoyne, the sports director here at Fox 2. Ben Frederickson. I'm Randy Karraker. And guys, we're in the midst, the heart of the baseball season, but stuff is coming up very quickly. Mizzou football is coming up. Illinois football is coming up. The Blues have their draft. What intrigues you, Ben, about what's coming up on the sports scene?
Well, I'm pretty interested in the big season Eli Drinkwitz has ahead, big in terms of what's going to be his future at Mizzou. I think Eli is a realist, and he knows that this season could make or break his time at Mizzou. He's been giving me grief all offseason for kind of pointing out some of the questions, and it's all in good, in good fun. But I think he also realizes,
like when he says that Ben hates me, that's in good fun.
Yeah, I think so. I don't hate him. I actually stuck up for him when he went down to SEC spring meetings and got ripped apart by the national media for, I guess they think he's against NIL, which he's clearly not. No. But Eli knows what's at stake. He's got a new quarterback, new offensive coordinator, new offensive line coach. The offense has to be better. We've already seen now Desiree Reed-Francois, the AD there, she'll make some changes. She's changed baseball coaches. She's looking to hire one. She made a great hire in Dennis Gates. And I got to think that if football's not in a good bowl game this year, then she'll want to go hire a football coach too.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by that too.
And I think he knows what's on the line, even though
Bet.
he's got to poke you a little bit. It reminds me, we always had to interview Jeff Fisher on the road after the game. And so I would call Charlie Marlowe. They'd be in Seattle or Arizona, wherever they were that they lost. And he'd be sending his footage back. And I'd say, how's Fisher? He goes, he's fine. He makes $7 million a year. He's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think Eli is probably like, listen, if you end up firing me, I hope it works out.
Right.
And I'm going to do everything I can to win. But if I don't, guess what? I'll be fine. I think there's some of that. Mine is really the Cardinals and Blues. How I almost put them in the same group where they've had lots of success, but their fan bases now are kind of like, well, what are you going to do now? You're kind of not in purgatory. Like the Blues have a lot of questions to answer. They raise the bar by raising the cup. What are they going to do to be measurably better or different next year? I'm not sure. And if the Cardinals do get to October, do they get bounced again early? And if they don't get to October, then it is kind of this body of work. You're not really doing anything deep into October. What does your future look like? I think both of them are in a similar spot, and we'll probably know October for sure with the Cardinals. But I think the Blues, you might know by when they arrive at October, what are they putting on the ice?
Right. And over the years, Doug Armstrong has been a Houdini with some of the contracts, the Laterra contract, the Berglund contract, the Sobotka contract. Is he able to pull that off again and trick somebody into taking a contract that is really prohibitive for the Blues?
He's going to be here, right, Randy? Army is going to be the one building this offseason. We're convinced of that.
He would be crazy to go to Toronto.
I don't think that there's so much national hype about Doug Armstrong looking to leave. I think Doug wants to fix this and wants to get this team back to where it's competing at a high level. You never say never. Doug will be the first to tell you. The first time I talked to him after they won the Stanley Cup, I said, "How you doing?" He goes, "One more day closer to being fired." I mean, he's a realist, right?
Yeah.
But I think he's got unfinished business left here in St.
I agree with you.
It's interesting that he and Mo, I think, are at their best when they're making deals. It's like they bring in top talent, whether it's Ryan O'Reilly or Goldschmidt, Arnaudo, and getting
Shen
from when they unloading some of the contracts you're talking about, how they were able to. I always think, how do you keep a straight face when you package some of those items? Now, the Cardinals have packaged a little too much in recent deals, but it's interesting how they both have really brought in marquee talent. Actually, in the history of this city, if you think about it, with the Marshall Faulks of the world and the players who've come here, Brett Hull, via trade, as opposed to homegrown talent. So, Blues, you're on the clock. They already know. Can we say that at 101, the home of the Blues?
We can, yeah.
You're
on the clock.
And they know it.
They know it. They listen every morning. They know what's going on. It is so important for us to have quality people on the St. Louis sports scene in the media. Martin Kilcoyne, you see him here on Fox 2 all the time. He's my new boss. And Ben Frederickson, you read his work in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and hear him on the Big 550 KTRS. I'm Randy Karraker. Thanks so much for joining us here on the 101 on Sports. We'll see you next week here on Fox 2.